Okay, today we're learning the Sicha of Parshas Teruma. In the year, that year was 1 month, so it's Shabbos Shkalim, and it's the year of Tav Shin Lamed Dalid, 1974. So it says like we spoke many times, and it's explained in many places. Shekol Inyani B'nei Yisrael, when it comes to things with regard to Jewish people, Tzrichim lahaschil mi'aTorah. Everything starts from Torah. Kal B'nei Yisrael Nemar, when it comes to the Jewish people, it says that Amcha Kulam Tzadikim, that my people are all righteous. Tzadikim Darmim L'Boirim, and the righteous are like their creator. So therefore, L'chein, Keshem She'etzel, HaKadosh Baruch Hu, Metzinu Shebrias Klolus Seder Shtalshus V'Olam Hazeh, Befrat, Ha'isei Dei, He's taklus b'Torah, so everything comes from Torah. So just like the creation of the world comes from God looking into the Torah, and from the Torah God creates the world, meaning from the information of the Torah God creates the world. As it says, "Istakul b'Raisa bara alma," that God looked into the Torah and created the world. Kach gam eitzel b'nei Yisrael, so too when it comes to the Jewish people. Shetzrichim lihistakul b'Torah v'lisnahi gepoel k'fei Raisa Torah. When a person wants to know how to behave, one looks into the Torah to look and to find guidance in their life. So from Torah, you should find the guidance, not just the actual not just the actual mitzvos of what a person is supposed to be doing, but also in general the ideas of how, if you're in doubt, what the approach should be. All the details and general rules of life are all found in the Torah. It's for every Jew. And for every at all b'chol zmanim in all times, b'chol zman, b'chol inyanim, b'chol inyan. So the Rebbe says in all times, in every single time, in every situation, heim b'inyan shalchiyav, whether it's a positive situation, as Hamai shayasin, what you should be doing, heim b'inyan shal, whether it's in a negative situation, ashayasin, things you should not be doing. So when a person has questions what they should do in any situation, and you're in doubt, what's the approach? You look into Torah, and from Torah one finds guidance of how one should go forward. So the Rebbe says, just like that in every situation, so too when it comes to this Shabbos, I mean the Shabbos of Parashat Teruma, 1974, that a person has to look into to find insight of how one should move forward. And I'm sure they're going to give us more detail of what he's referring to. That, like in everything, like the famous teaching of the Baal Shem Tov, when it comes to the ideas of hashgacha pratis, of divine, that a person has to see everything. How's Torah approach it? This week the Rebbe says there's 3 things that are happening and that we could take insight from. One is Shabbos Parshas Teruma. It's the Shabbos where we read the portion of the Torah of Teruma, which is this week's parsha. It's also Rosh Chodesh Adar, the beginning of the month of Adar. And that year, it was Parshas Shkalim, that it was also the week that they read about the giving of the coins. They read about, hold on. They learned about the giving of the coins, which we read the Shabbos, the beginning of the Adar, which is usually the Adar that is going into Purim. So this year we don't read Shkalim because it's the first Adar. That year, 1973, when it came to the Shabbos, they took out 3 Torah scrolls from the Ark, because one to read the Parsha, one to read about the new month, and one to read about the special portion with regard to the coins that people had to donate, the half shekel that people had to donate every year to the treasury of the temple. So a person has to look into the Torah. When you look into the Torah, Rebbe Shimon, when you look into the Torah, we're on page 232, still in Sif Aleph, the Rebbe is giving a Hagdama, an opening to his talk of Shabbos Parshas Teruma. That year was one Adar, which was also Shkalim, the year 1974. So the Rebbe says, if one wants to know what's the message of the week, you have to look into the Torah, and also you have to look into the order of the Torah to understand the message that one could drive insight for this week. The leader says, And because you look at the order of the Torah, so when a person has to start contemplating about taking a message from the week, you have to start in the order of the contemplation. You can't first start saying, I'm going to contemplate about donating a half a coin to the temple's treasury, which was very important. And there's deep messages about that donation. Each person's a half a coin, it takes two to make a completion. All the ideas that we know about the lessons of Parsha Shkolim. And Rosh Chodesh also has tremendous lessons, but we have to first talk about the Parsha because that comes first. So the Rebbe says so too when it comes to the speech, which the Rebbe is about to give a Sicha. So also too, we have to talk about the things in order. Meaning to say, in this Farbrengen, which we're not going to learn the whole Farbrengen, the Rebbe is going to discuss lessons that we could take from the Parsha, lessons that we could take from the Rosh Chodesh, it's the new month, and the lessons we obviously take from the being Parsha Shkolim. So the Rebbe says like this: Seder Hakriya b'Toirahu. Therefore, Shetchila Koyrim Parshas Hashavua Parshas Teruma. On page 232, the last paragraph of Sif Aleph. So first we read about the Parsha Teruma. Then we read about the Rosh Chodesh, the new month. Shaba Niska Omnam Gam Inin HaShabbos Ubiyem HaShabbos. We read especially about the Shabbos part of Rosh Chodesh. The main thing is not the Shabbos, but mostly the Rosh Chodesh part. Because we don't need to read about our requirements for the Shabbos sacrifices, because that we have covered, so to say, by the Parsha of the week. Okay, that's the Rebbe's opening talk. That year, 1974, there were 3 readings of the Torah. They took out 3 scrolls: one to read about the Parsha, one to read about Rosh Chodesh, and one to read about Shkolim. And we have to take lessons of insight for ourselves from each, but we have to do it in the same order. The Rebbe says this: Parshas Teruma, which is this week also, although we're not Rosh Chodesh and we're not Shkolim, but we are Parshas Teruma. So the Rebbe says Parshas Teruma. What is the lesson we could learn from the Parsha of this week? Ubagdama. Parshas Teruma, at the beginning, we're starting Sif Beis, at the bottom of page 232. Ubagdama. Parshas Teruma, K'may B'chol Parsha, Pasuk, Ba'afilu Oishe the way the whole Torah is even if it's a verse or just a letter, Yeshribi Yanyanim. Every letter and every word of the Torah has tremendous ideas. We know that there's 600,000 sounds. It's not letters. People say there's 600,000 letters in the Torah. There's not. There's 300 and something thousand, but there's the silent letters. So there's 600,000, so to say, letters in the Torah. Kidua. Shekivan Shekol Torah Nitin L'chol Echad. And we know that in general, by the Jewish people are divided up into 600,000 souls, corresponding to the 600,000 souls that left Egypt. So even though today there could be millions of Jewish people, but they're all, so to say, come from either one of these 600,000 souls. Each soul is broken up into small souls. So the Rebbe says the whole echad miyashishri b'nei Yisrael, all the 6,000 Jews. Yesh b'chol inyan shishim ribi pirushim. The Rebbe says that the Torah is so complex that there's 600,000 insights to every idea of Torah. We're obviously not going to discuss the 600,000. But we're all limited. We can't think 2 thoughts, never mind 600,000. Like the Alter Rebbe brings down in halacha, the person has to stay focused on one thing at a time. We know that the name of the parsha is the first place where we draw insight. So although there could be the parsha has many verses and many letters, and so therefore each letter and each verse has its own message. But the main message that we draw from a parsha, we start to look at first at the name of the parsha. From the name, it starts to give us a direction of how we understand the parsha. Therefore, when it comes to analyzing this week's parsha, we have to analyze the name of the parsha, which is Teruma. Teruma means to give or to take. A Teruma is generally a donation. So it was talking about Moshe asking for the donations for those who wanted to contribute towards the building of the tabernacle. Each person had to give, but each person had to give certain amounts, and some people gave, and then you were able to give above and beyond the minimum amount. And of course, as we learn over the next few weeks, the Jewish people gave so much that God had to say, Moshe had to say, enough.
Where are you right now? I'm sorry.
We're on page 233, just starting let's say the second paragraph.
Okay, thanks.
Like we know that the name of the parsha is the vessel to give the vitality of the parsha. From this understood that the name of our parsha, which is Teruma, that's not the first words of the Torah. The Torah doesn't start off with the words Teruma. The Torah starts off I think there's another pasuk. If I'm not mistaken, I have to check. But if I'm not mistaken, the Torah starts the parsha starts with Mikra I have over here. It's the first opening of the parsha is by Dabar Shem Moshe Lemer Dabar Al Bnei Israel V'Kli Truma. So there's many letters and words before the name Truma. So we see that's not just because it's the first word of the parsha. Moira al Nefesh. So the word Truma is the soul of the parsha. The essence of the parsha. So therefore, when one analyzes what should be the first letter that they should contemplate to give them insight on the parsha, you have to look at the name, especially when the name is a choice that didn't have to be, because there's many letters and words before that. What does the word truma mean? So the Rebbe says, Rashi tells us right away. Hafrasha, separate. You're separating something for God. You take something, and you separate part of it. What you separate, part of it remains for yourself. If you give everything, not leaving anything for yourself, it's not separation. By definition, the word separation means, the word truma means to separate. So separation means you're separating something. If you give everything, you're not separating. It's called giving or taking. That's one translation. The first translation the Rebbe says of Teruma that we can advise from is the word hafrash, separate. Definition separation means that you separate something that's whole and you give part of it to something that you separated. Part of it goes to one place, and the remaining stays with you. Another translation of the word truma is lashon harama, to elevate. That's also the simple explanation of the word truma. The Rebbe says it's not just, when I say it's pshuti shemikra, it's not like I'm lessening the translation. When the Rebbe says that something is this is the literal translation of the word, it's not for just the simple people who can't understand deeper meaning. So therefore they have to be satisfied with the literal translation. The Rebbe says everyone has to learn pshuti shemikra. So no matter what level of study you are at, you also have to learn the literal translation, which is Rashi. Like it says clearly, the Rebbe gives an example that when even the 5-year-old who learns the verse that says about Yosef, that without you, without Parai, no one could, without Yosef, Parai tells Yosef, without you, no one should raise their hand. So the idea of Yorim, Truma, means to elevate. But Inyam Bazes, the Rebbe says, what do these two translations mean? Elevation, to elevate, or to separate? In the meaning Truma, and how we're going to find insight for our day-to-day lives from that. But Inyam Bazes, the idea is like this. Hafrasha, when we say to separate something, it's possible to separate two things, and the thing that you're separating, that gets separated, stays. Like you can separate dough, you make two of the same, one large loaf of dough, you can make 2 loaves of dough. But if you separate, it's two bread, two loaves of bread, or 1 loaf of bread. But when you separate the dough, not that one part of the dough becomes better than the next part. So that's one way to separate, where it remains the way it was, is just separated. Or there could be change, but by the separation. As it was before the separation. That either it goes lower, means because of the separation, now that it's separated, it loses value. Even in reference to its size, or it becomes better, right? So it all depends on what you're separating, right? If a person has a piece of meat and you cut off the bad part, now the steak becomes a more valuable piece of meat because you separated, you took off the parts that were less valuable, right? So the K'may be'inyan havdalah, but he gives an example. The Rebbe gives an example. For instance, when we say havdalah to separate, when we make the havdalah service after the Shabbos, so what do we say? It says that we're separating now. We're telling you that even though a week is made up of 7 days, we're separating Shabbos from the other 6 days. There's one separation that is an aliyah, an elevation from below above. When you separate and you're leaving the 6 days and going into Shabbos, that's an elevation, right? You're in the mundane, the week, and now you're elevating, you're separating from the week and going into Shabbos. So that's an elevation. There's also separation. But if you read that where you're going lower, from above down. We leave the Shabbos and we go into the week. So Shabbos is holy, and we leave the Shabbos and go into the week. Now we're going down. We're lowering ourselves from Shabbos to the week. And this is what the Rebbe saying an amazing thing. This is why the Rebbe says we can't just learn the word Teruma to be separation, because separation we don't know what that means. God says to Moshe, tell the Jewish people to separate from your things towards the Mishkan, towards the tabernacle. But by separation alone, I don't know if I'm separating up or down. So therefore comes the second explanation from Rashi, which is Harama. When you separate, elevate it. When you separate for the Mishkan, that separation by definition is an elevation. He gives an example. The Jewish people from amongst the other nations, when God said to take the Jewish people and make them my nation, it says in Parshas Veschanan that I took a nation amongst nations. Before the Jewish people left Egypt, they were a nation amongst other nations. By taking the Jewish people out of Egypt and giving them the Torah, God separated the Jewish people from the other nations, but not in a way of separation, upward, down, or just separating, but of elevation. That's why he says that he took him for me. Same too, when you separate Shabbos from the week, you're separating upwards. From below above. That was just giving an example. Now the Rebbe says that's how someone has to understand. That's what it means to give a donation or give from yourself, from what you have, towards the Mishkan, towards the tabernacle. Right? This is how people approach tzedakah sometimes. Sometimes people approach tzedakah, you're giving down. Right? It's my money. I'm giving it down to someone. Someone needs money. I know, what should I do? I feel bad. So the Rebbe says over here, when it comes to Teruma, you're giving Teruma for the Mishkan. You're not giving down, you're giving up. You're separating upwards. That's FYI, that's the same thing in tzedakah. Tzedakah also is separating upwards. When a Jew takes from his or her gold and gives that towards the tabernacle, that part of the tabernacle that before was chol, was weekday, was mundane, and you separate it towards the tabernacle, it becomes elevated. Not just that it's more elevated than it was when it was in your bank account or in your vault. Incredible what the Rebbe says here. The Rebbe says you can't be what your gold can be. You are a mundane person, even if you're holy and even if you have but you're still physical and limited. When you separate your gold towards the Mishkan, towards the tabernacle, something that you own now becomes something that God owns, so to say, and that's something you can never have. The gold and the uniqueness, the opportunity over here is that something that is yours now becomes God's. And it becomes elevated to something in a way that you have no potential to become. He says, again, when a person separates from his gold or her gold for the Mishkan, this gold becomes separated in a way of elevation. Not just that now the gold itself becomes holier, but so to say, the owner of the gold is now in a different level. The gold becomes part of something that the person can never become part of. The Holy of Holies. And the Rebbe says more. It's very possible. It's an amazing thing to think about it. The ark was made out of gold. The keruvim were made out of gold. The Holy of Holy was made out of material, physical things. There was the wall of the Holy of Holy. All those things, God didn't donate them. They came from the people. People gave gold and all the kind of, it says the people, the men, the women gave more than men, the kids gave, everyone gave tremendous, everything they wanted. They gave until Moshe said, enough, you guys gave too much. There's nothing, we covered all the costs and plus. So now what happened? They built a Mishkan. In the one part of the Mishkan is the Holy of Holies. In the Holy of Holies, what made it the Holy of Holies? It was physical things were there. There was an ark. The ark was made out of wood, gold, and parts, even though there was the luchos that came from Hashem, but there were parts of the gold and that came from the Jewish people. The gold was in the Holy of Holies, but you can never go in there. Your gold could possibly be part of the ark. So your gold is in the Holy of Holies, but you can't walk in there. If you walk in there, you die. If a person walks into the Holy of Holies, they die. Based on what the Chazal teach us, Medrash Chazal, when it came to the giving of the gold, God said, let the gold of the tabernacle come, and take the gold that you donated or you gave or you forced onto Aaron to create a golden calf. Let that gold now become part of the Holy of Holies. Right? The same where the golden calf also didn't come from nowhere. The golden calf came from the gold that people gave. The people came and gave gold, right? They ripped the gold off their wives and they gave it to Moshe Rabbeinu. It's an interesting thing. It doesn't say that they went to their safes and took the gold. The gold, when it came to making the statue, they ripped it off their wives' jewelry, right? They weren't ready to give their own gold. But when it came to the Mishkan, then they realized that their self-absorbedness and selfishness. So it says, Nitan Yosef. So it says, so that comes the gold, and the gold of the Mishkan comes to atone for the gold of the golden calf. Nitoisef Yosef b'haflos inyan. Shazav shekashim egel azav. The same gold that technically was connected to building an idol, the golden calf, Misala is able itself to become holy. The Kodesh HaKadoshim now to be part of the Holy of Holies. Shabai Haya Aron, the ark, Imakapiris, with the covering of the ark, the Kruvim, Shahayu Mizav, they're all from Zav. Lamaila Gam Halaviyim, Shlei Shtatu B'chet Egel. And even the Levites that weren't part of the Chet Egel, they weren't sin, they still can't go into the Holy of Holies. But the gold that was part of the Egel can. Lamaila Filim Kohen Gadol, even more than the Kohen Gadol, Shnichel Kodesh Doshim, Rak Achas B'Shana. Even the high priest that can go into the Holy of Holies can't go in whenever he wants. Only once a year, only on Yom Kippur. And not just for any reason, but to do a very, very specific service. The most holy service of the day was done on Yom Kippur by the Kohen Gadol. So even the most holy person from the tribe of Levi, who wasn't involved in the golden calf, he can't go in whenever he wants to the Holy of Holies. But the gold that was technically part of the same ownership that build idols now is part of the Holy of Holies. And what the Rebbe is obviously going to give us a lesson. What is this? What is this a lesson to us in our lives? Right. So this is an amazing idea that the gold itself is you're able to turn from the lowest of points to the highest of points. And not only that your possessions, things that you own, could be part of something that could be part of something technically that's holier than you. So the Rebbe says, what is this as a lesson to us? Again, the Rebbe started off by bringing that we're supposed to take a lesson from everything. And a Jew has to find inspiration in general, but specifically for things that are happening at the time. So therefore, the parsha of Teruma is read this week. So right now, when it comes to questions that we have to find inspiration now, we have to find it from a parsha that we're reading now. It's nice to find inspiration from places outside the parsha, but that's not its time. But this is specifically its time. Therefore, it's a message for now. So the Rebbe says, what's the lesson to this in our service of God? Yehudi tzarech lekachas minyan v'atoivim. A person must take from their best the things that you possess. Ulahafrish mehem truma ba'ofen shalarama, and separate those your things in a way of elevation. Hafrasha ba'ofen shalyirida, to separate things of you and go lower with it, bring them to lower places. That's not for a Jew to do, right? A person works hard and earns Baruch Hashem a nice income, and then takes from that money to do things that are destructive, or to do things that then means right now you're separating it to do something bad with it. You're separating for due to something that's not Jewish, or not in the right spirit of holiness. Right? Nothing. Sometimes it's bad, actually bad. Sometimes it's just not appropriate. So the Rebbe said, we're not talking about things. There's nothing wrong with Baruch Hashem buying for yourself things and having things. The thing is the focus. Why do you need these things? How does it? Everything has to come down to how does this help you serve Hashem better? The Rebbe says, Afrasha ba'ofen shel yirida, when it comes to separating things that belong to you and bringing them lower, right? What did the gold do that you have to make it part of an idol? This is not something that a Jew should do. Because a Jew shouldn't have anything to do with bad things. Or you transformed your instincts, your desires to something positive. You worked on yourself. You're now holding in a better place. You're good. If a person may think, I don't have to do anything. I'm not going to separate my possessions for bad things, but I'm either because I know how to avoid them or I'm beyond them. Right? So a person may think that that's good enough, as long as I don't take what belongs to me to create articles of negative. Then I'm in a good spot. Right? I'm a totally righteous person. Chassidus, not just the righteous person on paper, but actually the Chassidus looks at a righteous person. I already done my job in the world. What do you want from me? I went and worked on myself. I made myself a better person, tackled my issues, worked out strategies to deal with my instincts and my desires and things. I'm in a good place. I'm doing well. This is the message we tell the person. It doesn't work like that. A person always has to elevate. It's not good enough to separate yourself from the bad, but you have to separate from yourself to the good. And like the Rebbe says, hafrasha doesn't mean everything. By definition, the word separation means if you're giving everything you have, so that's not a separation, that's just giving. Separation means no one's asking you to give everything. To be totally cut off from the world. Not every mind can handle such a message. That's not practical. A person's only holding in the beginning of their so to say giving towards the tabernacle. You can't say right away in the first message God says, "Give me everything you got." We're still holding where there's every single person got the message from Moshe. Separate from what you have, separate something from what you have towards the tabernacle. Just like when it comes to parsha reading, right? So one has to look at the parsha as a message that I'm learning the message as we read it, right? I'm holding the beginning of the message. So the message can't be too strong for me. It can't be over demanding for me. Nevertheless, the Rebbe says, because you're a descendant of the fathers Avram, Yitzchak, Yaakov, and of course the mothers Sarah, Rivka, Leah, Rachel. You are a part of. You have it as an inheritance. As you are part of the people that says the Amcha, my people are all righteous. Therefore, we can ask a hafrish, separate at least. Separate something of what belongs to you and elevate it to holiness. On the other side, the Rebbe says, Okay, the Rebbe says, first the Rebbe's message to the person who feels that he or she is complete. They avoided all bad things in the world, right? So now the person may think I'm doing well. And so that's okay. But what about elevation? You still have to separate to go higher. Now the Rebbe is saying, what about the person who has not tackled all their issues yet? On the other side. What about a person who's still connected to bad? There's still a struggle in their life. For whatever the reason is. The Rebbe is not going to go into the details, obviously. This person is still holding the place where he or she has to go away, go away from bad. Right? Like you're holding the place where you have to know what animals you can't eat, right? You're still struggling with kosher. And then from there, from going away, avoiding things you shouldn't be eating or doing, to start doing more positive. I remember the person, there's a message for that person also. There's times in the year, when it comes, it's a moment, right? The tabernacle is being built now. A person may think, how could I be part of the tabernacle? I'm struggling keeping kosher. I'm struggling keeping Shabbos. I'm struggling putting on tefillin every day, lighting Shabbos candles. And you're asking me to help build the Mishkan? That's not even part of my conversation. So the Rebbe says the lesson is over here. When it comes, there's a momentary message. Not always. Sometimes the approach is let's not concentrate on the bad. Let's focus on the good. So a person may say that when Rashi says hafrasha and harama, a person may say, I'm not holding hafrasha to separate and elevate. I'm still trying to separate from bad things. The Rebbe says usually you have to work in order and you have to first tackle your negative. But there are those moments when right now, notwithstanding of where you're holding, notwithstanding with the struggles you have, right now you have to separate upwards. The Rebbe says to put things in simple English, so to say. Yehudi tzarich lahafrish chelik min yanav. Person has to separate part of their things. Yanav sharevach bekashrus omnam aydei slapshus v'lvushay teva. Even though you have things that you earned in a kosher way, but they all went through the laws of nature. But you know that everything is really a blessing from God. That even though you've done the things you should be doing in order to get this blessing, but it's a blessing from God. The success of it, the outcome of it is all a blessing. To take from that and separate it and give it towards holiness. Now, just like that part of the gold could enter places you can never go. The gold will be part of the tabernacle inside the Holy of Holies, be part of the ark. You can't go to the ark, but your possessions that you earned with your hard labor is part of the Holy of Holies. And don't give secondary. You give the best that you have towards the building of the tabernacle. Your gold. Just like it was when it came times of the tabernacle. Even the most simple Jew. The Gemara Mecharis tells us that everyone, no matter what, gave from their gold towards the tabernacle. There wasn't a Jewish person who left Egypt. Each Jew, the Rebbe says, he quotes the Medrash, that left Egypt, the minimum they left with was 90 donkeys carrying gold and silver. Means that's the idea the Rebbe speaks about. The Jewish people left Egypt very wealthy. On the other side, it's not also good enough just to give what's important, just the gold. A person may say, okay, gold I'm going to give, but everything else belongs to me. Everything that you own from what you have to give towards the tabernacle. Just like it came to the Mishkan. They didn't just give the high priced items like gold and silver. They gave copper and the other 13 things that mentioned. Which some of them are just wool or other things wood. And we know that a person's existence is made up of body and soul. Gashmis v'ruchni is physical and material. It's a physical, material, and spiritual. Just like you have to give from your body, zahav v'kesef and nechaysh shutim, you have to actually give physically gold, silver, and copper, etc. So too, when a person wants to give towards Hashem, you can't say, I'm going to give whatever. What do you want me to do? You want me to put on film? I'll put on film. You want me to think about God? That's something else. You have to give from your spiritual gold and your spiritual silver and your spiritual copper. Chabad, the Chochma Bina Das, the intellect of yourself. Kesef, the Regesh Shebelev, you have to give your heart to God. And your actions, your movements to God. You can't just say, okay, whatever, I'm going to give to God. You want me to give to God for my spiritual? What do you want? What does Hashem want from me? You need me to light candles? Light candles. Love God when you light candles. A person may think, a person may think that all I have to give is my mind. We say, no, give your heart. Your feet, your power to move. A person may think on the other side. When it comes to me, my movement that's involved in the physical world, okay, I'll elevate my movements for God. My heart, my mind, they're refined as it is. They don't need elevation. So that's the double message. Both if you have to separate from the lower levels, and you have to separate from the higher levels. Constantly bring everything that belongs to you, elevate, whether it's your material things or your spiritual things, your intellectual, your heart. This is the lesson from Parashat, that from all things, whether they are important things that belong to you or that are part of you, or things that you may say, okay, they're not so important. Whether it's your body, whether it's your soul. A person must separate Teruma by days of livnois as base of build your temple. I love God wants to rest in all of you, not just in your gold or your silver, spiritually, in your mind, in your heart, in your movements. And every single Jewish person, that this, when a person makes their own temple, this should make us to merit us. That we should merit to be part of the building of the third temple, with a true, complete redemption, with a righteous Mashiach. The temple will be built where it belongs on Temple Mount. And all those who are lost amongst Israel be gathered speedily in our time. And the Rebbe continues to learn in this Farbrengen lessons from Adar and then lessons from Shkolim. All right, everyone. Thank you for joining. I want to wish everyone a good Shabbos. Again, Simcha de Shabbos is Mishneh Nichnas Adam Arbin B'Simcha. So it's a good message. Take everything you got. If you have something, separate it. You don't have to give everything, but separate what you have. That's the message. Separate it from the things from amongst what you have, both in your material and your spiritual, in your mind and your heart, towards Hashem. Laila Tov and good Shabbos. Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Ariel. Take care.